Hi, everybody. It's Alex again from the Remote Work Life podcast. And I have a wonderful guest with me today. As I said, I've said it in previous podcasts, we only have the best guests on the Remote Work Life podcast. And today I've got Shiran Yaroslavsky with me. She is the CEO and one of the founders of Cassiopeia. Now, Cassiopeia is a very interesting product because whether you are accustomed to working remotely or if in this whole new age of remote work being forced upon certain people, you're still getting used to the whole aspect of working remotely. You know that if you're managing a team, a remote team, you know what the challenges are like, the challenges that you face at the best of times. So Cassiopeia is a really interesting product that helps it's a startup essentially that empowers managers of both fully and partially remote teams to maximize workplace experience. So Shiran, I just really wanted to thank you. We need these kinds of conversations, and we need you, people like yourself, to help to empower and really drive remote teams. So I really wanted to say thank you for joining me today on the Remote Work Life podcast.
Thank you, Alex, for having me here.
Pleasure. And I just really gave a little snippet, a little taste as to what Cassiopeia really is. But what I really want to start by doing is really finding out about you first and foremost, Shiran, and then telling me a little bit more about what Cassiopeia does before we actually get into the nuts and bolts of how it can really help remote managers out there.
Yeah. So definitely. So Cassiopeia, what we do, as you mentioned, we help managers, remote managers, to get the insights they need to improve collaboration, belonging, mental health within remote teams. What we do, we analyze metadata. So data like who sent to whom and when. We're not analyzing any text or any content, and just provide weekly email reports to managers with the insights they need the most. So yeah, and I would love to share a bit from what we learned in the past few months of, just the shift to remote work and how it affected companies these days. And yeah, really looking forward to share from our experience.
Mm-hmm. I'm really looking forward to learning more as well. And I want to find out about you as well, because you have an interesting path as well. You obviously have your experience of working remotely yourself. Right now, Cassiopeia is fully remote. But tell us about your journey. I'm always interested to hear from people like yourself, because you had a really kind of so you've done obviously law, and again from there you've moved from law into product and then into becoming a founder yourself. So tell me in your own words how your journey sort of originated or evolved to where you are now.
Yeah. So I'm very passionate about how to use technology to empower remote leaders. I'm speaking in a lot of occasions about how to use data to empower leaders these days. But before that, and before Cassiopeia, my background is in product management. I led product teams also remotely in different countries, very distributed teams. And before that, as you mentioned, in a different life, I was a lawyer. I'm still a lawyer. I'm a lawyer by training. I hold bachelor and master degree in law, and I kind of shifted to tech. So this was my own unique path. Definitely,
That's great.
Not a regular one.
So it's a I don't know. Is it an unusual combination, that law and tech? What kind of encouraged you to make that transition, and how did you do that? How did you go about that?
Yeah. So while I was studying law, I was also an analyst, and I always was curious about, I think, the combination of tech and science with legal, and this is why I was majoring in intellectual property. So I always loved this, the combination of the two. And I think when I finally realized that being a lawyer is not really for me, it's not a good fit. And also I lived in Tel Aviv. We have so many tech companies, and I just decided that I want to try tech. I want to try also to build things I was missing. Being a lawyer, you usually advising more, and I really want to build something. So this is how I decided that I wanted to become a product manager, and I had the opportunities and in the right time, in the right place to do that. So yeah,
it's a good combination though, isn't it? Because when you're working in product, you know, I suppose that many people who work in product or in tech, probably, I don't want to sort of generalize too much, but I think if you have a combination of being able to advise people, the softer skills, the softer side of things, and you combine that with the tech side of things, that combination makes for somebody who can really have that empathy to understand how to understand people first and foremost, and then you've got that tech where you can understand how to use tech to help people. So essentially that's what Cassiopeia does for remote managers, isn't it, really?
exactly. Definitely. You put it really accurately.
So tell me then a bit more about the Cassiopeia team, because you're fully remote. Right now you're working. You told me you're working in California. Where is the rest of the team? How is it all sort of set up?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Israel. I moved to the States last November. My two partners are located in Israel, and marketing and development also spread around the Middle East and the States. So we are fully remote. Definitely, it's more challenging for me because when I used to manage remote teams, we were kind of working maybe in the same kind of time zone, not a lot of difference. And now we are much more apart, and this is like asynchronous communication. It's much more challenging, and you need to find a solution for that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's something that it comes up a lot. That the theme of that asynchronous communication and how best to I guess stay productive, but at the same time take into account and have that empathy for people who may be in a different time zone or work to a different schedule to you. And how is the team, how are you going about doing that? Is it that you set your own individual agendas and then you get together? Because again, another thing that I've been noticing, especially about this, the situation that we're in now, is that people are just being, I guess, I suppose those who are not as experienced with remote work, managers in particular, are sort of having 4-5 hours worth of meetings per day to, not really getting much done. How are you going about staying as productive as possible in your team?
Yeah, so definitely, I think like every person, it's about knowing your how you work best and how you can prepare yourself for success. So I can say that for me, my schedule is in the morning hours. I'm usually taking meetings with Europe and Israel, and then I'm leaving to myself, just blocking in my calendar a few hours of focus time. And then like in the afternoon hours, I'm taking some more meetings. So for me, it's about structuring the day, so I will be as productive as possible. And also we just decided on some communication methods for us as a team that works for us. For example, how we update our just sending our daily updates in the right way, and how we communicate with each other, how we communicate with each other during work hours and after work hours. So yeah.
And I'm assuming that you're using Cassiopeia to kind of keep tabs of things and people within your team. How is that helping you to keep on track?
Yeah, so part of Cassiopeia is that what we do, we allow managers to get the insights that they need to improve collaboration, belonging, mental health. So for us as a team, it really helps us to understand how we can balance better our workday and also our collaboration within our team. So definitely that, and also how we can improve our communication with each other, what kind of channels works best for us. But every company is using it differently, because every company is got some different kind of challenges. And the beauty in Cassiopeia is that you also can customize your report. So you basically can decide what kind of insights interest you most, and just get only these insights, what's relevant most for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we when we were discussing what to talk about, because like we said before, even I suppose the most experienced remote managers can have challenges when it comes to having the pulse of their team. I mean, I've experienced that myself. I have colleagues or friends who experience that as well. You've kindly come up with a few suggestions for us as managers, remote managers. Probably those who these suggestions probably are, I guess, applicable to not just experienced remote managers, but those who are, still adjusting and acclimatizing to the world of remote work. So you've come up with a few ideas as to how to use data to make better, sort of like data-driven decisions as a remote manager. Do you want to just share some of your insights that you've come across with Cassiopeia, and from your experience of speaking with the managers in other remote teams?
Sure. So definitely I can share that something that we hear a lot these days is that working as a remote manager, you're basically working with a smaller data set. You don't have all these small data points you used to have while working in the office. So you don't see how people engage, with whom they're drinking coffee, who's taking lunchtime together. And actually, it's really harder. It's really harder. You don't get all these data points. So there is a new gap that is created by the shift to remote work. And the question is, how can we close that gap? And this is what Cassiopeia is doing, helping managers to close that gap, get the insights they need about team dynamics. And I think one of the things that's really important for leaders is to be aware of this gap, of these challenges. So according to our data, more than 77% of managers indicate it's harder for them to manage their team remotely. And big part of it is because that gap that I just mentioned. So be aware of the challenges you have as a remote manager, because managing a remote team is not like, managing your team from the office only with Zoom. It's a different playground, right? Mm-hmm. Alex, I know you will agree. So first of all is about being aware for this kind of challenges. And I think like this is the first step.
And I think you're right. And what I should have pointed out before we started this is there's five key areas, and that whole idea of the workplace experience gap that Shiran is talking about is really the part where you can't just accept that just because work is not going to be the same now that you're working remotely. You have to have that in your mind, I suppose, that wherewithal to adapt to the different circumstances. And I'd also say, just try to maybe even talk to or listen to how other remote teams, how other remote managers are dealing with or dealt with those early stages to kind of understand where the gaps occur. Wouldn't you say, Shiran? So the work experience gap is one thing, and then you talk about as well identifying what the main challenges are for the company as well. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So I think that the next stage is to just assess what your main challenge is as a company. As I mentioned before, every company experiences different challenges. Everyone is working differently. And what we do at Cassiopeia, we use Cassiopeia to assess what kind of challenges you have. Basically, if it's about communication and optimize your communication, if it's about collaboration, if it's about maybe onboarding new employees, I can share that I have few companies these days that are growing really fast remotely for the first time, and it's really challenging for them. Onboarding new employees remotely is challenging. So how you do that? So we're helping them also to optimize and maximize the onboarding of new employees experience. So basically, the second stage is to use data to identify your challenges. The next stage, I would say, is to find the right data layers that are and metrics that can help you to measure and assess, your challenges and your progress. So, for example, I can share. One of the customers we worked with, we identified that there is a drop in communication between two teams. So we saw that there was a lot of communication going through these two teams, and over time it just decreases by almost 40%. And we highlighted to the VP, the relevant VP, and we managed to really detect it in early stages before things started to fall apart. And we also, part of CP's report, we identify these signals, but also we recommend what to do with them. So we just recommended more activities that can improve synchronization and communication between the two teams, and we saw this metrics going up and just recover. So it's about finding also the right data layers and metrics that can help you to assess these challenges and your progress in the way.
Right, sounds good. Can I just ask, Shiran, before we move on to the next point, I want to actually jump back a point, because you talked about previously identifying the main challenges for your company. Are there any, through the data that you've experienced with Cassiopeia, are there any sort of typical challenges that any of your customers, your clients face?
Definitely. One of the things we saw is with the shift to remote work, there is a significant increase in meeting time. A lot of companies are trying to close that gap that we mentioned by over communication. So we just saw that there's much more meetings and calls, and the downside of it is that a lot of employees just feel they don't have any time left to work on their personal tasks. It's just created a lot of stress and work overload for many teams. So the question is, how can you balance, right? How you can communicate in the right way and make people also feel belong, having these Zoom calls and feel connected to each other, but also make sure we have enough time to work on our personal task and not, jumping from one meeting to another all day. So how we can really balance a workday. So what we do, we use Cassiopeia to help team leaders to just create this balance. So for example, if we see that the meeting time increases in specific team significantly, we highlight that. If there is decrease in focus time in the department level or team level, we help to identify that and find solutions. So this is something we see quite a lot these days. I think it's very natural, the struggle about how to create the right workday balance for remote teams. So this is one thing that I can share.
Yeah, exactly. A friend of mine who he's a middle manager, and before he used to have a lot of meetings, but he said to me now he's having 5 or 6 meetings per day, and that has an impact. That's bound to, if you do that for a length of time, that's bound to have an impact. It's bound to start to burn you out, and that's going to mean that you're going to be probably working more than you did before, because your time is literally your whole day has been taken up with a meeting, and then between the meetings you're preparing for the next meeting and then doing work as well at the same time. So it's good, because it's good to have something that you can point to, i.e. Cassiopeia, and then you can see where those pain points are and then adjust just accordingly. And then in point 3, you mentioned some of your case studies in a sense, where they were having activities. You mentioned something about activities. Are there any kinds of activities, I don't know, either yourself or people who other remote teams do in order to sort of alleviate that whole sort of burden of work?
Yeah. So it really depends. What we do at Cassiopeia, we work with the leading experts in the space of remote work, and we met between the signals and the right recommendations. So if I'm going back to my the previous use case I mentioned about decreasing collaboration, what we can recommend, for example, is more activities that can improve synchronization and collaboration, such as maybe pair calls between the two teams, or just invite other managers to the team daily, just to improve synchronization between the two. So there is different activities, different recommendations, but it really depends on the signal and the challenge that we are addressing.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. That's great. And so we were on point 3 where you said finding the right data layers and metrics to measure and assess. And I guess each team is going to probably look at different metrics and prioritize different things.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Yeah, definitely. And it's, there is no one size fits all. It's about understanding what your company's main challenges and address it accordingly, and also according to the culture you have and what's important for you. And then I would say that the next stage will be to set up the right processes to track the changes within your company culture. So, using Cassiopeia is one way to do it, to just set up reports and understand, help you to track these changes. We provide the weekly reports and a monthly report, so you can see it very clearly, and the trends and how we managed to improve the metrics that we chose. But even without using Cassiopeia, you can set up the right processes if it's a monthly check. If it's, also companies can for sure analyze their own data or get feedback from employees. So find the right processes that can help you really to track and see the changes within these data layers that we discuss.
Mm-hmm. And again, I guess tracking is important. And I suppose does Cassiopeia, I guess, suit, I suppose, a larger team or a smaller team, or is there's no particular preference? Because I know some people that I've spoken to, some managers that I've spoken to, they might have a smaller team of, let's say, 10 or 15 people, and each of those people really, I guess, are seasoned. They know what they're doing. They know where they're going. They don't necessarily see the need to track what they're doing. Is it more suited to teams that are bigger and perhaps working more asynchronously?
So I would say the smallest team that we work with are, a bit more than 5 employees, but it depends on the team, on the challenges, on, as you mentioned, the communication. So basically we can work with also small teams, but definitely as there is more challenges, the team is more distributed or larger, different teams in one department. So the blind spots are just larger. So it really depends on the case.
Excellent. And that leads us nicely onto point 5. Obviously, I think, again, the best remote teams, the best teams full stop, regardless of whether they're remote or not, but especially if they're remote, the leaders within those teams, the managers within those teams are the catalysts for any sort of transformation or improvement. So Shiran, you mentioned that point 5 being making sure that leaders are committed to act based on the metrics and the results. Can you tell us a bit more about what you were meaning there?
Yeah. So before we start even to measure and to assess, and the processes that can help you to do that regularly, we need to make sure that the leaders are really committed to act based on our metrics and data. So it won't help if we're gonna measure and assess all this information without be able to act on it. So basically we need to make sure everyone's aligned, everyone knows what we are, leaders, the relevant managers know what we are measuring, and really are committed to act on it based on this data and these insights. So I think this is one of the most crucial components of the process, for sure.
Definitely, yeah. It's all about, having people on board, because if you kind of try and use it as a stick to to beat people with, that's when you're going to get pushback. But no, it's been very
Exactly.
interesting, Shiran. And tell us, because Ethiopia's gone through some changes, and what are the plans in the future, and what's the future looking like for you as well?
Yeah, so we're working with a lot of tech companies these days in the UK and the US. And I think our plans is really to expand and help more companies in more regions to just improve the way they work remotely. This is our plan, and this is how we would like to see it grow, and also grow our impact as a company, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we definitely, I can share that from my personal experience. Or from a personal perspective, I moved to the US only the end of last year. So also
Mm-hmm.
my plans is also to be able also to maybe to live in the US, not in COVID time, so I can see it some more.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But
And you're in a nice part of a nice sunny part of the world where you've got beaches, but I guess right now there's not many people going to the beach at this time.
no, not that much.
Oh, that's a shame. But yeah, eventually things will return to some semblance of normality, if not sort of a different kind of way of living it up. You picked a nice part of the world to be in, and what we want to do is we want to keep track. We want to keep up to date with you and with Cassiopeia. I wanted to thank you as well for your time today. And as I said, let's keep in touch to see what Cassiopeia is doing. And yeah, just stay safe. In fact, one more question. I mean, other than, because you said is it California you're in at the moment, right?
Right. Yeah.
Any other sort of places that you're going to travel around the US at all, or are you just going to stick to California?
Yeah, so I can share that California is not all California, but the Bay Area where I live is in shutdown for many months now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm waiting for my hairdresser appointment for more than four months now. And what we decided a few weeks ago, me and my husband, is to pack our things and just travel and work for a bit. So I traveled in Salt Lake City and Yellowstone, and it was amazing because it's people that are working very hard for so many hours a day, just seeing only your house and nothing else beside that is really can be depressing. So
yeah,
I think it was one of my best decisions just to travel and work a bit. So highly recommended for our listeners.
No, definitely. There's a few digital nomads listening as well, who I'm sure are going to, be hopefully be connecting with you on LinkedIn to see how you're doing as well. I'll leave a link in the show notes, Cassiopeia, and also your LinkedIn profile. But I just wanted to say again, thank you for your time, Shiran, and we'll be keeping an eye on you and Cassiopeia at the Remote Work Life podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Speak to you soon.